SMGs after PTS. You're going to want to get grinding. So the SMG tier list has actually had like a pretty big shake-up from what it previously was. Obviously, what it previously was is basically just vector. Pick a vector, you're fine. After that, you did have MP7, and there's a few other things that would slot in. Now, it's basically Ouroboros, MP7, and then the Banshee. Now, depending on how you're wanting to play and where you want to put your stat values, if you want to go for pure burst DPS, it is in that order: Ouroboros, MP7, Banshee. However, if you're a bit more of a sustained player and wanting to go down that route, Ouroboros again, and then it's Banshee, and there's like MP7 doesn't really compete here. It's very far down on the list, which is kind of sad. I mean, as you can see here, obviously Ouroboros is at the top. We've then got the tactical vector 9mm, which a lot of people are going to be clinging to. However, do you remember it has like one of the smallest magazine size within the SMG category? So after that, we will be looking at the MP7 and the Banshee. Though what you want to do with this information is entirely going to be up to you. This is just their base stat values with the buffs provided from the PTS. And if we switch this around now to sustained DPS, obviously, surprising literally no one, Ouroboros is still coming in. But we get like the M19 2A, the Tommy Gun, the T821, the Org, the Oompa Loompa, Backfire, Banshee, which is where you think it. And then finally the MP7. However, being the fact that the burst DPS is going to be the more important stat here, you will want to build around the burst originally, and then if you need to rely on the sustain, you can either just cap out with the weapon itself or just take a secondary weapon that's going to be more of use in this department. That being said, on that list you might have noticed that both Chatterbox and Lady Death were very low on the list, and that's because we're calculating these at base without actually putting in their buffs or direct multipliers. So before you get angry at me, this is with both Chatterbox and Lady Death with their full buff applied. However, do be aware that things do change around slightly with the exotics, because one, exotic attachments such as Chatterbox actually having lower crit chance but higher crit damage, and Lady Death basically only having a piss poor mag size, there is not much point in extending it because you will compromise too much of that damage, at which point it then becomes actually a useless weapon. So the real question now is how much of an effect does Behind You actually have on this? So I'm hoping by this already we can all agree that our top 3 SMGs are going to be Ouroboros, the Banshee, and the MP7. So let's actually now just deep dive into just those weapons and see what happens. So I use a pretty standard Hunter's Fury build. Here it is. 4-piece Hunter's Fury, chest guard, Gruppo. I went with Unstoppable Force and Obliterate just because that's kind of what I like, and they basically give the same buff that Vigilance would do. And as you can see, they're the stats for both the MP7 as well as the Banshee. I did not factor in the expertise because and I just couldn't bother removing it from the screenshot. However, this is just the basic build I used. I also used the exact same build for Ouroboros. Nothing actually changed. The only thing that realistically changes is the crit chance for the high-end weapons is 58, where the crit chance for Ouroboros is 63. Obviously, we don't get the 63, but other than that, basically all the stats work out the exact same way. So all we're really comparing is a 2% difference in crit chance, the massive difference in RPM, and then obviously the Behind You talent being a 40% amp. These builds give us these numbers. Hopefully you can see the only real difference between the MP7 and the Banshee is just the RPM as well as the base damage, which gives us these numbers, which is pretty damn impressive. And if you've ever watched any of my previous videos, you'll know that this is just a little bit, just a tiny bit more powerful than Ouroboros. This is why a lot of the endgame community is upset by this talent, because of the way in which we play. We can guarantee a not 100% uptime, but enough to make a huge impact on the game. and one talent is more powerful than the highest burst and sustained DPS weapon in the game with little to no effort. Yeah, this is why we're not happy. This is why we're calling this to be nerfed, and it should 100% be nerfed. I mean, I don't know, man. Maybe, just maybe, hear me out a second. Maybe this guy was onto something. I'm just saying. Like, if every weapon is OP as hell, then nothing's OP as hell. Problem is, this severely unbalances the overall dynamic difficulty in the game. But here, we're not here to talk about this. We're here to talk about overall SMGs. So obviously, with the sheets that I've put up, this is calculating behind you at 100% of the time, which is not necessarily always going to be the way forward. That being said, I'm not too sure how to calculate this. It will require further testing, which I need the talent to be in the game for, which we currently don't have. So if we basically just run all of this again, but just equate behind you at 50%, we get these numbers, which is a lot easier to sort of actually realize. Perhaps, potentially, Ouroboros isn't actually going to die, just because, quite honestly, it's going to be impossible, like actually impossible, to have 100% uptime on behind you. It's not going to be impossible to get a very high uptime, and it's going to be depending on the group you're with and how you utilize it. We did find that disoriented enemies don't target you, so using something like Hunter's Fury over Strikers with something like an SMG, especially in solo, is now going to be the preferred way to go. That being said, in solo, your uptime is very much going to be between like 25 and 50%, depending on how you want to utilize it, at which point Ouroboros is then a more powerful weapon. But however, in 4-player and even in raids, behind you is going to be incredibly powerful and is going to upset a lot of the meta strategies and plays that we have. However, in the meantime, have fun, good luck, don't die. It's bad for the health.